Hello and welcome to the Anaheim Open team preview. I told you guys I'd do a team upload thing of whatever I decide to bring with me to the Anaheim Open. Here it is. I'm actually recording this on Tuesday. I leave on Wednesday, and the tournament will have ended on Sunday. So this was either a smashing success as you're watching it on Monday or after, or a complete failure, or just kind of mediocre. Either way. Either way, we're going to try and not be terrible with this team because that's how we roll. This is actually a completely new team. I know there are some aspects where you guys have seen some of the stuff I've used before. Ultimately, I went with a comfort zone. When I was building for Worlds, let's just get on into it, right? So as I was building for Worlds, the biggest thing, not Worlds, the Open, the biggest, as I was building for the Anaheim Open at Worlds, saved it. The biggest thing that I noticed was I was trying out a lot of different mechanics that I hadn't really experimented with or played with before. And so while those may have quote-unquote been the play to bring this time around, I'm one of those players where it's definitely a matter of comfort. If I know the team, if I know the team mechanics, if I understand how the team plays really well, it's going to do me better than picking up something that may be a superior team in some aspects, but ultimately I don't have as much practice with it. So when it came down to it, I wanted to go with something comfortable. And as you can see, there's rain. there's always rain, right? Rain has always been something I've been very comfortable with. It's always a team archetype that I've performed pretty well with. Even when I mix it up and add sand and make a weird rain team, it still functions kind of well. This is like Weird Rain 2.0 almost. This is what I call the Thunderstorm team, and we'll get into it in just a minute here. So, as you can see on your screen, we're going with some different moves. This is a normal Pelipper. Its EV spread specifically is modest max attack, 4 in defense, and max speed. It's got a focus sash. Pelipper's not. I've gone into Pelipper builds that have been super bulky or super fantastic, and with citrus berry or pinch berries, and it's just not. Ultimately it's not worth it. As common as Tapu Koko and stuff, it's just not worth it. So the two common moves I think that a lot of people are familiar with when it comes to Pelipper are Hurricane and Tailwind. Pelipper provides the first form of speed control and speed support on the team. And that's also got Brine, a move that I feel like was probably made more popular by Rain superstar Tommy Coolene. And this Pelipper is pretty inspired by that. Brine picks up a lot of KO. So the thing that we'll notice about the team as we go through the EV spreads and everything, which I don't have them on hand specifically, but you'll be able to see the calcs. I might put a paste bin or something in the description below. We'll see. But ultimately, the team picks up a lot of near KOs, right? And so even though Pelipper is predominantly a support mon in this, Brine can come in when the Tailwind is up and pick up a lot of KOs pretty easily, leaving the heavier hitting to things basically like Golduck through Coco down on the screen there, to kind of pick up the bigger KOs that it needs to actually hit. And then Wide Guard. So normally that fourth slot would be for Protect, but this time we're running Wide Guard. Not the easiest thing to breed onto a Pelipper, let me tell you. It can get it through a couple different mons, most notably Toxapex, I think is what I ended up breeding it on, because I couldn't evolve my Mantine because I couldn't get a Remoraid. It was the whole thing. Or Mantike, sorry. I couldn't get a Mantine because I couldn't evolve Mantike. It's the whole thing. Anyway, so this Pelipper is going to provide a lot of support. He's got the Wide Guard for common stuff like Dazzling Gleam, Rock Slide, because the one thing I've noticed is that with rain teams, a lot of times the biggest threat is Coco, right? Coco can do spread damage, it can pivot with things like Volt Switch, it can disrupt with Sky Drop, it can give big damage with Thunderbolt and Thunder. But a lot of times, they'll T-Bolt into the Pelipper, people will T-Bolt into Pelipper, and then just go for Dazzling Gleam the next turn because it might be the fastest thing on the field at that point if you didn't get a Tailwind up. And so they might get a little greedy. Same thing with Rock Slides. That's the one thing I've noticed with Rock Slides too. So wide guard coming in here, especially things that are like, you know, locked into things like Earthquake or Rock Slide or Dazzling Gleam, it can be troublesome for a lot of players. So I'm trying out wide guard. I had a lot of success with it actually. This team, as it stands, has jumped about 500 points on the Showdown ladder, for what that's worth. But it got me into like the mid 1600s because I wasn't right at 1100 points when I was there. But you know, I feel like it's very useful. It's a nice tech because most of the time, with the way that the team functions, with the other aspects that we'll get into in a second, weather isn't necessarily the most important thing to have with this team. And I know it looks like a rain team, and it is a rain team. So me saying that, oh, having weather isn't that important sounds really dumb. But just bear with me. Bear with me. We'll get through it. We've also got Golduck. So Golduck here, pretty common Golduck. The moves, Hydro Pump and Scald, again, popularized by Tommy Coolene. He is like the rain guy this season, this format. Scald, like I said, kind of with Pelipper's Brine, it kind of comes in and picks up extra KOs. Tommy did a great job of explaining his teams throughout the season, and one of the things he mentioned was when you Z-move into a Protect, right, like a Coco or something like that, because that's bound to happen. What you can often do then is just go for a Scald immediately after. And as someone who misses a lot of moves, oh, I was practicing on Showdown, and I missed 13 out of 21 Hyper Beams. It's a sad day. So that's why we're not running Porygon Z today, fun fact. But anyway, Hydro Pump has a chance to miss. I think it's 80% accurate, and so that's not really something I want to deal with all that frequently. So Scald is a nice secondary option. A lot of people like to run Encore, myself included. When I first started running Rain, I really liked Encore in that slot. So good. We have Ice Beam and then Protect. Pretty standard Golduck. The EV spread's a little bit different, as you can probably tell by the 100 stats. It's not the bulkiest mon. It's not the bulkiest. Tommy ran a very bulky kind of Golduck. Or not a very bulky Golduck, but sacrificed some speed. This one's a little bit faster because I wanted to be able to outspeed other Scarfs, and I think the normal or the standard Golduck build will outspeed any Adamant Scarf Kartana. So I think I went for Jolly Scarf Kartana just because I was like, well, Jolly Scarf Kartana kind of botches up my team a little bit, as you can tell. So we definitely want to be faster than that on a couple different aspects. I wasn't really too concerned about Hard Trick Room. The more I looked at Hard Trick Room, because I considered running it, the less viable an option that I kind of thought it was. So what we have is kind of like a very solid Rain Core team. It hits very fast, it hits very offensively. We've got nice tech with Wide Guard and Tailwind. And then we have a cool guy named Buzzwole. So this Buzzwole was a nightmare to EV train, by the way. The EV spread is really complex on this Buzzwole. It's fast. It's fast enough to outspeed what it needs to in the format for the most part. As you can tell by the 100 stats. Again, all this breakdown will be down in the description more than likely. But this is the Buzzwole that I decided to go with ultimately. And you'll notice it's not using close combat. We're not running close combat on this bad boy because we have a Hammer Arm. So with the EVs invested, it outspeeds things normally. But then I think it's max speed. A neutral Pelipper, I want to say it outspeeds. I don't know, or zero investment. I don't know, something like that. It's widely based off of Tommy's, but it's not. What this Buzzwole does is it doesn't tank as many special hits, but it hits a lot harder. And one of the nice things about it is with Hammer Arm, I can lower my speed, right? And Buzzwole's at a very interesting base speed. It's 79. So with the investment, like max neutral 80 base, I can underspeed it in Trick Room if that's a thing. Because what I've noticed with a lot of Trick Room teams is they end up being utilized. Trick Room usually gets utilized in order to undo things like Rain Mode, undo things like Tailwind, like things like that. So a lot of teams will have Trick Room on their team just because they assume their opponent is going to set up some kind of faster speed, and then they just Trick Room and everything's fine. And Porygon 2 is really good at that. So there's honestly no reason not to do that. And you may have not a hard Trick Room team, but you might have something with Snorlax. Snorlax has been really, really solid this season. So again, I want to be able to underspeed those things after a Hammer Arm or two. And that's predominantly why I decided Hammer Arm over Close Combat. Close Combat's going to lower defense and attack, and that's not something I want to be happening. I want Buzzwole to be a nuisance, but I also want it to pick up a lot of KOs. And again, it's got a nice little counter Trick Room aspect to it. So we've also got Leech Life, Poison Jab, and Ice Punch. Those are fairly self-explanatory. So yeah, it's pretty standard. The team doesn't really start to get interesting until the last 2 Mons, to be honest. But Buzzwole, very, very solid Mon. I'm surprised it hasn't had as much usage. I think a lot of players like it. They've just not really gotten into it yet. Tapu Lele. So there's always this discrepancy as to whether or not a Tapu is good, whether it's Bulu or Lele or Finny. We all know that Koko's good, but the opinion of the other 3 tends to change pretty frequently, it feels like. We're timid, we're scarfed, we're not max speed timid, but we're pretty darn close, and then we just threw the rest in HP after we maxed out special attack. We've got Psychic and Moonblast for really strong stab attacks, fast, strong stab attacks, especially when we're in Psychic Terrain if we need to be. Dazzling Gleam, so we can pick up, some spread damage, maybe 2 KOs at once if it comes to that. Again, the team does a really good job about hitting hard, and then occasionally you're going to have to chip away. And so if you either lead off and chip away to begin with and then just fire off attacks from the back, or if you fire off attacks initially, which is kind of what the team does best, big attacks up front, and then have your chippers in the back that just pick up the KOs pretty easily, with spread damage or bulky offense, things like that. And then we have Energy Ball. Energy Ball is really, really good. Energy Ball is really good. You might be wondering, Blue, why are you running Energy Ball? Because Gastrodon's a thing, and I seem to be the only one that ever runs Rain and comes across a Gastrodon. So I decided, I need to have some Gastrodon insurance, and that is basically Energy Ball. That's kind of, besides Buzzwole, that's like my biggest tank to Gastrodon. And I don't think Energy Ball Lele is really all that common. It's about as common as Gastrodon, so I guess that maybe fits. But ultimately, Lele's job is to just kind of hang in the back, fire off big attacks when the time is right. Yeah, Lele, in my opinion, Lele is good. Lele is good. It is Scarfed, so if we lead double Tapu, we're going to get Electric Terrain up, which is predominantly what we want all the time. We always kind of want Electric Terrain, and here's why. So Tapu Koko is here to do Tapu Koko things. Its spread is something generic, like 244 special attack, 252 speed, and then 4 in HP, defense, and SPDF. Why was that split? Because you pretty much wasted 8 EVs in special attack because 252 didn't pick up anything that 244 did not. So what ended up happening was I kept switching between either Thunder or Thunderbolt. And I thought, well, the more I look at this team, the more it doesn't necessarily rely on Rain, right? Electric Terrain is kind of the big thing that it needs. Electric Terrain, get it. Sorry. Anyway, so we've got Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, Dazzling Gleam, and Protect. Pretty standard Koko stuff. Volt Switch is there to pivot, right? So we can keep Terrain up if we need to. It does decent attack. It's not anything great. It's not gonna KO like a Celesteela or Drifloon or something like that. But it will be able to pivot us in and out of positions that we need to, in things where Rain can come in if it's in the back, or we can just kind of reassess. Because the nice thing about Koko is Buzzwole and Koko play off each other pretty well, unless it's like a neutral hit, like a Lele Psychic or Moonblast or something like that. Buzzwole doesn't want to deal with that. But it is a nicer way to get a slower Mon in and tank a hit, specifically from Garchomp. Buzzwole is the big Garchomp answer. Buzzwole is that mon that is there to tank those things. And Pelipper's kind of the same way. Like, that's kind of why Focus Sash is there, to be honest. Like, if it goes down to Sash, we can pivot it out, and then we can sack it off later if we Volt Switch or something like that. But ultimately, keeping up terrain and weather are kind of the big aspects of this team to allow everybody else to do their job well. Rain protects Buzzwole. Electric terrain keeps, psychic terrain from being buffed to basically kill Buzzwole with no disregard whatsoever. So Coco's there to do Coco things because Coco is good at doing Coco things. Honestly, like, there's not really much else to it. Like, there's genuinely nothing else to it. Again, Coco's going to be there. It's going to be doing like 85 to 90% damage on pretty much everything. Ideally, we don't want the Dazzling Gleam that much, but again, it's there for spread move, similar to the reason that, Lele has Dazzling Gleam too. That's kind of the important part. So everything's been pretty cut and dry for the most part. Like, the wide guard on Pelipper's kind of interesting, meh. Energy Ball on Lele, well, it's just kind of coverage security. This Raichu is probably my favorite thing about Pokemon. I used Raichu back in 2016 as well, and it was a similar variant to this. It wasn't ideal. It wasn't identical. Even this is not like ideal. I didn't do much calcing in ways of bulk, right? We're max speed because we have to be max speed timid to outspeed Jolly Kartana. That's a problem, right? So we definitely want to be faster than Kartana. That's very important. But the tech on Raichu is so cool. Like, Raichu is one of those Pokemon that gets so many cool tech moves, and I thought it would be a shame to not use it. And yes, I do have Fake Out with Lele on the team. I am very aware of that. But we're running Fake Out, Feint, Thunderbolt, and Encore. So not really anything is faster than a timid max speed, right? Alolan Raichu in electric terrain. I think Sand Lycanroc, like Sand Rush Lycanroc, might be the fastest thing in the format of all. But Raichu in terrain is like pretty darn fast. So we have Fake Out so we can disrupt things. We have Feint so we can pick up KOs if something is sashed, or if we want to, if we're like very, very confident that someone's going to protect that turn and we want to knock it out this turn because we need to. Feint is there for that, and that's really, really nice. Thunderbolt's going to be there to do damage, honestly. Like, Thunderbolt in terrain is really, really good. And then we've also got Alolan Raichu Z. I don't know how to say it. To do big damage, we can get paras off of that. Possibly, I don't think it's guaranteed, but it's pretty close. And then we have Encore. So Encore is my favorite. It might actually be my favorite move in the game. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of what I was trying to do with this team, it looks identical to this, right? But Whimsicott was there instead. And a big part of that was the nature power, the priority Z move that we could get from that. The Encore, of course, is super duper important, and another Tailwind or whatever. But the nice thing about running Kokochu, if you will, is because we have 2 speed modes now. Rain is really fast. Kokochu is faster. So the nice thing about this is we can get a Tailwind up if we need to. We can counter other speedy teams in that regard. But we don't have to win the weather war. We just have to keep Trick Room from going up. That's honestly it. That's all we really have to do. Hopefully we won't see a lot of Trick Room teams. I'm very hopeful that won't happen. We can handle Golduck. Mimikyu might be might be a bit of an issue, but other than that, it's a pretty solid team. Like I said, like, it played pretty consistently. I haven't really done any best of 3s with it, but there's enough tech and there's enough diversity in terms of what leads I can pick and what modes that I can go. That I don't think best of 3 will really be that big of an issue, to be honest. I guess we've already found out by the time this goes live, huh? Maybe I'll do like a post-team recap and let you guys know how it went. I do take notes. I do take notes whenever I play, so you should take notes too. You should do that. So I mean, for what that's worth, like I really wanted something techie, right? The reason I love my 2016 team was because Lopunny could encore things in the submission. It can fake things out. Like, it can hit stuff really hard. Raichu kind of does that. And it's kind of a mixture between my Scizor and Lopunny from 2016, and I love that so much. Like, Encore, Feint, those things are so... Like, I love using attacks like that. I love disruption and kind of techie moves like that. So, ultimately, I know a lot of people were like, oh, this combo's going to be really good. Like, as soon as Sun and Moon hit. And then everybody was like, well, it's bad. And it's not the best. I totally will... I will absolutely not question that. But ultimately, like, when I had Raichu on the team, the fast attack was great. I had Psychic in place of Feint, and I was like, I never really use... Like, I'm not really clicking Psychic all that often. Why is that? Because Thunderbolt in terrain pretty much hits everything neutrally the same that, a Psychic would. Or, like, I'm just not... I'm not using Psychic all that often. And honestly, like, if I need to use Psychic, I'm bringing Lele with terrain so I can get the boost. So ultimately I decided to go for Feint. It made more sense. It's a priority move, so it plays off with the idea of, Lele for Psychics, Raichu for Techs. And so that's ultimately what I went with. This is the Thunderstorm team. That's what I've called it. We've got Electric mode, we've got Rain mode, and then we've got Buzzwole and Lele, which are just kind of like good mons, to be honest. But I'm really happy with how it turned out. I've played around with so many teams. It hurt my heart. Genuinely hurt my soul a little bit. So I'm just glad to be done team building. I really am. But I do like this archetype. I really do like this archetype, and I'm probably going to be playing around with it a little bit more as the season goes on, because more than likely we won't have a format change until like December or January. Later in the year, or January 2018, I guess at this point. So that's it. That's the team. That's what I took to Anaheim. Hopefully it went well. Hopefully it went well. Hey man, it is what it is. You can't prep for everything. I think it was Giovanni Costa who said, like, you can build a good team that has weaknesses but generally plays well, or you can build an amazing team that has a bunch of weaknesses, but, performs decent. So, I botched that completely. That's not what Gio said. But anyway, ultimately, that's kind of how I feel about this format. You can cover all your bases with a team, or you can play with something that's good. So that's kind of what I went with. I went with double mode. And I'll tell you, the responses I got from Showdown, oh my gosh. And I went along with it too. I called it a hot mess. This team is kind of a hot mess, I'm going to be honest. But I look forward to kind of tweaking it in the future. It's a fun team. It really is. Again, I'll try and get a paste bin in the description below for you guys. If you want to go test it out or something like that. We'll have to see. But other than that, that is the team review. That is what we're taking to the Anaheim Open. And hopefully, cutting would be awesome. CP would be great. Not going negative would be the best. So that's what we're rolling with. And I love this Raichu so much. I'm getting a Raichu plush for that wall. Do I have one? I don't even have one. We gotta get one. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I am Blue, and I will catch you next time in an all-new video. Take care and have a great start of the week, because it's Monday. Happy Monday, everybody. I'll see you later this week.